This is an introduction to the bones. This is an introduction to the bones by Pilates Core Integration for 3D Clayful Anatomy. Although we're born with about 270 bones, many of these fuse in infancy and young childhood, and we ultimately end up with 206 bones in the adult body. There are 11 functions to the bones. These include, number 1, protection of our internal organs. So the heart and lungs are protected by the rib cage, and the brain, for example, is protected by the skull. Second, our bones provide structure. They create a frame to keep our body supported. Thirdly, they allow for movement. The bones, ligaments, tendons, and joints function together to generate and transfer forces to individual body parts or the whole body so that it can be manipulated in three-dimensional movement. 4. Sound transduction. The bones are important for the mechanical aspects of hearing. 5th, our bones produce blood cells, especially in our bone marrow. Mineral storage. Our bones act as reserves of minerals important to our bodies, especially calcium and phosphorus. Growth factor storage. The bone matrix stores growth factors such as insulin-like growth factors. Number 8, fat storage. The yellow bone marrow acts as a storage reserve of fatty acids. Number 9 is acid-base balance. The bones buffer the blood against excessive pH changes caused by releasing or absorbing alkaline salts. 10. Endocrine organ. Our bones control phosphate metabolism by releasing fibroblast growth factor 23, which acts on our kidneys to reduce phosphate reabsorption. 11. Our bones are important in detoxification. Our bone tissues can store heavy metals, removing them from our blood and reducing their effect on other tissues. In 3D Clayful Anatomy, we will focus on number 3, the movement on the bones, ligaments, tendons, and joint functions. Now, here are some definitions for the types of bones in the body. We have 5 types of bones in our body. The first are our long bones. Most bones of our limbs, including our fingers and our toes, are long bones. The exception of those are the wrist, the ankle, and the kneecap. Short bones, these are cube-shaped. The bones of our wrist and our ankles are short bones, as are our sesamoid bones. Flat bones, the examples of this are our skull and our sternum, our breastbone, our flat bones. Sesamoid bones are embedded in tendons. These are your patella and the pisiform. Irregular bones, they don't fit any of the above categories. The bones of the spine, hips, and some bones of the skull are irregular bones. The source of the information in this slight tutorial is the Wikipedia online, and in Clayful Anatomy, we're going to focus, generally speaking, on our long bones and on the irregular bones. So now let's talk about the tendons, the ligaments, and the fascia. A tendon is a tough band of fibrous connective tissue that usually connects muscle to bone, and it's capable of withstanding tension. Tendons are similar to ligaments and fascia, as they're all made of collagen, except ligaments join one bone to another, and fascia connects muscle to other muscles. Tendons and muscles work together to move bones. Joints. Joints are where 2 bones come together. There are 6 types of joints, sometimes you can consider it 7, in the human body. Number 1 is the ball and socket joint. Number 2 is the hinge joint. 3 is the saddle joint. 4 is the pivot joint. 5 is the gliding joint. 6 is the hip joint, because it does so much more than just act as a ball and socket. And the 7th one that you might consider is the SI joint. In Clayful Anatomy, we're going to focus on the ball and socket, hinge, hip, and SI joints. Now, most of the joints that we're going to focus on, but not all, will be joints that have, they're called synovial joints, and they have synovial fluid in between the joints. So we're going to talk a little bit about some terminology here. Flexion is decreasing the angle between any two articulating bones. Extension means we're increasing the angle between two articulating bones. Hyperextension means we increase the angle beyond the normal range of the articulating bones. Abduction means moving away from the midline, and adduction means moving toward the midline or even crossing the midline. Circumduction is a conical movement of 360 degrees in a joint. Rotation is a movement on which a bone or a limb pivots. Elevation is upward movement of a joint. Depression is downward movement of a joint. Protraction is a movement forward, and retraction is a movement backward. Eversion is a movement where the plantar surface of the foot, the sole of the foot, moves away from the midline. Inversion is a movement in which the plantar surface of the foot, the sole of the foot, moves toward the midline. Dorsiflexion, you can think of this as pulling your toes to your nose. And plantar flexion, you can think of this as toes away from the nose or pointing your foot like a ballerina. Pronation, when you talk about that in relation to your arm, is turning the palm inward while rotating the forearm. Pronation with the feet, that is a normal gait pattern when walking. Supination is turning the palm outward while rotating the forearm. Supination with the foot means rolling to the outside of the foot. In 3D Clayful Anatomy, we're going to focus on all these kind of movements, and we'll talk much more about the joints and what they do and how they function. Pilates is a joint-friendly form of exercise, and it's very important to preserve the joints. So knowing your bones, knowing about the tendons, the ligaments, and the fascia, to some degree, are also important. But we're really going to be focusing on the bones, the type of movements they make, and especially the joints in 3D Clayful Anatomy.